I'm Alex McClintock. I'm here today to review a book from Pact of interest to data engineers. The book is Simplifying Data Engineering and Analytics with Delta. Okay, so this is the book. I got a PDF as a pre-release copy. I believe it is being published today, the end of July 2022, and there's a URL here for some more information about it. I'll try and include it in the comments. Pact link, capital R, small j for capital E, capital L. I don't know too much about the author, but I believe that they are a employee of Databricks. You may decide whether or not that's a good thing. About me, I'm, as I said, Alex McClintock. I've had 30 years in the software industry. For the last 10 of those, I've been designing and implementing big data systems. I used to be a data engineer, but nowadays I build the platforms that help data engineers to do their job. Most of my background has been in Cloudera and Hortonworks software, not Databricks, but hopefully that shouldn't matter for this review. So, who is the book for? People who are new to data engineering but need to learn. They might get a lot from this. I think also you may expect data engineers who are more experienced to find some benefit here as well. I think the difference is that if you are trying to learn about data engineering as a whole, then the first 50 pages or so are of more interest. If you're already a data engineer, those pages aren't necessarily going to be that interesting to you. You just want to know how to use this new Spark tool. So in this review I am taking quite a lot of diagrams and figures from the book for review purposes. If there are any mistakes, they're probably being corrected before you get your PDF or possibly the printout. So this is the scenario that we are trying to improve on in the title Simplifying Data Engineering. Historically, we had batch processes that ran once a day, possibly once an hour, possibly more frequently than that. And that's the blue thing at the top of this diagram. Separately from that, we would have a streaming layer that looked at the events as they happened, and they would only really look at the last day or hour and would wrap themselves up and package up the data for batch processing later on. So if you wanted to query that data and at any point during the day, then typically what you would need to do would be to examine two things at once. You'd need to examine the historical data, which would be correct up to, say, midnight or the last hour, and also you need to query the streaming system for the most recent data. And that lambda design generally became a bit complicated. So what was developed to help with that? So I've pushed the lambda diagram up the top here and shown you the kappa diagram. So the idea is that we are able to do something with tools like Delta that we weren't able to do before, and that is to build a streaming layer that actually stores the data long term. And so in this case, you should be able to cope with streaming and saving away to your a special type of file that means that you don't need to do the batch processing as well. That could be done within the streaming layer, and the intention is that Delta would be that new format. I'm not going to go into all of this in detail. I think I mostly included it to kind of demonstrate how complex some of the issues can be and the level of detail that this book goes into. Um, I don't always agree with some of the sentiment, the problems that they describe with traditional data lakes actually maybe still exist with Lambda and Delta. So not entirely sure if they're politically accurate all the time, but it's important to kind of look at those sort of issues. So, for example, on the left, data quality, yeah, data quality is always an issue, and using Delta doesn't necessarily improve that in any way. I think the other things to mention are that Delta is fundamentally a Spark based tool. So if you're new to Spark, this may or may not really help you that much. I'm not quite sure. Um, Fundamentally, the basic format in Delta is still Parquet. Parquet is a famous columnar storage format that we've been using for some time, and it works fine, but is mostly orientated to files that we write once, maybe every hour, every day, and then we don't really modify them in any way. And this is what the fundamental nature of Delta is about. It's being able to add in changes to the Parquet format so that you can treat it as something that is mutable, that changes over time, even if the Parquet file itself may be immutable. Um, let's see. Another point to say here is that the book spends a lot of time looking at the metadata around these files, the columns, the range of values in the data, and things like that. And that has always been a bit of a problem with Spark because it didn't necessarily know all about the files instantaneously, and quite often you'd have to tell it to synchronize the metadata, which they're claiming is not necessary with Delta. This is an example diagram from the book talking about the logical format of a Delta table. I think I've described briefly that you've got data files in Parquet, so the underlying bulk data format is still Parquet. It's just that it's got extra stuff as well, and basically that extra stuff is largely transaction logs. It's so that as you have your data file and you say, oh, I want to delete this record, I want to add this record, I want to update this record, each of those transactions appears as a new entry in the transaction logs. These happen to be in JSON. I'm not sure if they always have to be in JSON, but they do at the moment. Now, this is what it might look like on disk. And I have basically tried to show you this for one important reason. So you have your directory tree effectively of the name of the table, and you have a few directories inside it which contain different things. And this is the important thing, that if I want to tell you one thing, it's that the transaction log is not something you can just throw away. It's not an event log that helps you do diagnostics. So if you are running out of disk space and you're hunting down things to delete, do not delete these transaction logs within Delta. They are part of the data itself. I have heard of somebody who has deleted their transaction logs, not realizing that they were important. I don't know if that's apocryphal. It wasn't something that happened to me, thankfully. So please be aware of that. Okay, so I think part of the point of this is to show that the use of Delta is very, very similar to the use of Parquet within Spark. So here we've got an example of Spark running SQL, creating a data table, and in this case we're just telling it use the Delta format instead of use the Parquet format or use any other format. And you can read and write to it pretty much exactly the same way as you might do with any other table within Spark. So here is another example. I think the point behind this example is that you can, I mean, this is more of a Spark based one rather than a SQL based one. Here we're reading a CSV file and writing to a new delta table, appending it at the time. And the point we're making here is that you can start using that table straight away. It doesn't need to have a refresh of the metadata. That may be an important point for you. Here are some more. This is the range of SQL that can be done. This is trying to show you that there's a lot more SQL that can be done with Delta that can be done with Parquet, and that's because although Parquet is supposedly able to be appended to, that doesn't seem to be possible or easy to do within Spark. Whereas here's an example where we are clearly writing into and manipulating delta tables relatively easily. So, what's my verdict? Well, overall, the book is really quite good. It has got lots of useful information. It's a long book and it's fairly accurate. I only got thrown about twice for things that I felt were not quite correct, and they were more to do with Databricks rather than anything else, rather than Delta itself. Bear in mind that Delta is was created by Databricks. It's released as an open source product, but Databricks will still be developing it, and some of the more advanced features only exist in Databricks' closed source format. So that may be an issue for you, or maybe you're already using Databricks and you don't care. I don't know. Um, it This book does have a few flaws. I think that it only really focuses on Delta. I think a more unbiased book would probably consider Apache Iceberg as well and look at that, but maybe that's for a different book. And I would have liked to have seen some more about when to use Delta and when to use Apache Iceberg because they seem to be very similar tools. And also, I think that um, this book is very much for actual data engineers who are already using Spark, and I don't think it really had enough high level explanation to make it suitable for non data engineers, in particular managers. And the reason why I say that is because it is giving the information, it's throwing you lots and lots of facts, but it's not hand holding you through why these things came about or why you should care about these things. And I think that if you are a manager trying to understand the big picture, you probably want to be led through this a bit more slowly than in this book. But the information is there, so go for it. Maybe it's suitable for you. So data engineers, if you're already using Spark, if you have data that changes over time, then Delta might be the solution for you, and this might be the right book to teach it to you. Um, if you're a manager or architect, it might work for you, but there's probably better things to explain the high level picture. This book is supposed to be available on PDF and paper, I believe, from today, 29th of July 2022. I got a pre-release copy. I did not receive anything for doing this review apart from a free copy of the book. And hopefully you're seeing this sometime in August 2022. And I'll attach a link to the book in the comments. Please comment. I say the typical thing is to say subscribe. There isn't enough to subscribe to just yet. If you want to ask me more about this, feel free. If you want to employ me to come and do some consultancy for you, that's possible as well. Thank you very much.